You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is my review for Elvis. Uh-huh. Before we get into this review, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my latest videos. Elvis is a 2022 biopic starring Austin Butler, directed by Baz Luhrmann. We follow Elvis as he rises to fame through the 1950s, but as his fame grows larger, his relationship with his longtime manager, Colonel Tom Parker, grows ever more distressing. So, of course, we all know the basics when it comes to Elvis Presley. How can you not? He's one of the most famous people pretty much to ever live. When it comes to director Baz Luhrmann, well, what can I say? I'm one of his defenders. I love the big, dramatic, over the top nature of Baz Luhrmann's filmmaking style. I think most of us enjoy a little bit of Moulin Rouge. However, while everybody else seemed to be shunning The Great Gatsby, I was falling head over heels in love with that film. But when it comes to someone like Elvis, it's so tricky wading into the biopic territory. First of all, because there's so much territory to cover. While his life, unfortunately, wasn't all that long, there is so many different phases to Elvis's career, starting from his pre-fame that dancing it even into a long runtime like Elvis's 2 hours and 40 minutes is difficult. But it gets even more complicated when you're dealing with a controversial, really complicated person such as Elvis. So, how does Boz do? Well, I really enjoyed the film. I went into this film with quite a critical eye, but Boz once again wins me over with a really flashy, fun time that ultimately ends with a beautifully emotional story. So let's go ahead and kick things off with the positive. The biggest positive, far and away, when it comes to Elvis, is Austin Butler in the lead role. He is absolutely fantastic. Not only does he look the part, he sounds the part, and beneath all of that, he adds extra layers of humanity to what is an over the top, larger than life persona. Butler is fantastic in this role. And of course, when there's so much material to go off of, like there is with Elvis, getting those mannerisms down is easier, but in a lot of ways, it makes the depiction a lot harder because we all know Elvis. We know him quite well, and there's archives and archives of footage to put his performance up against. But really, it's what's going on beneath the eyes. It's the deeper cuts of his performance that make it truly ring through the film. He's wonderful. Then we get Baz Luhrmann's signature style, and for the most part, we'll circle back to the things that don't work, but by and large, Baz Luhrmann's larger than life, grand, dramatic style of filmmaking fits Elvis to a T, and it works here. Right from the opening, you see it. The screen is decked out in rhinestones and drama, and it is gorgeous from the get go. The costumes are also fantastic, really tailored to a T. They are beautiful. And honestly, I did not know much about this Tom Parker, this colonel played by Tom Hanks. My stepmother is a huge Elvis Presley fan. And through that vein, of course, I know pretty much all of the music. I know the specials, I know the films, I know the basics of his life when he died, the marriage breaking up, all that fun jazz. Didn't know about this leech that he called a manager for, well, pretty much his entire career. It's really a heartbreaking story that is told with so much compassion, and it really moved me by the end, particularly in a day and age where we're seeing people like my own personal icon, Britney Spears, being taken advantage of and hearkening it back to the biggest stars of yesteryear and how they were abused financially in this way. And it's really just a harrowing tale. Not to mention, I did enjoy the commentary moments we got, particularly with race in the United States. We're going to come back to race relations once again here momentarily in the negatives. But when it came to the way that the news depictions were happening, I love that the film really mirrored today's world in how the discussions are had, how violence culture and gun culture discussions are had. It was a really subtle touch, but actually quite effective. The sound design is also fantastic. The performances are absolutely amazing. Once again, harkening back to Austin Butler and his stellar performance, but the camera work is also so well done in these moments. So then, what doesn't work so well when it comes to Elvis? Well, I'm going to touch on the most superficial of them first, and that's Tom Hanks. I just really think he was miscast from the start. I never bought him as his character. It really felt like a caricature overall. The way it was written, down to Hanks's performance, I just really wasn't vibing with that depiction. And if that character had just landed, this would have been like top tier film for me. Also, as much as I love Boz and I love that dramatic filmmaking style he is famous for, sometimes he gets in his own way. Particularly in the first act of this film, the editing is so wild, and some of it works. Some of the big editing choices are fun. And as we go through the second and third acts of the film, there's still crazy editing, and it works much better. But in the first act, it's like Moulin Rouge level of freneticness, but it's a lot cheesier because we're doing it with these ugly, like little rendered, like roulette shots or these weird CGI Ferris wheels that don't look great. And honestly, those PowerPoint style edits and transitions cheapened the film rather than added to the grandeur that it was trying to build toward. My biggest issue with Elvis does lie within the screenplay. By and large, I think that the first act is way too fast. It just flies by. And then the film starts to massively slow down once Elvis goes off to the war. Of course, that kind of mirrors Elvis's career trajectory in many ways, as it was this meteoric rise to fame, just energetic, fast and furious type of living, and then it dramatically slows down in his ups and downs through the final acts of his career. But in doing that, I think it misses a lot of the key elements to Elvis's upbringing and the controversies of Elvis as a public figure. By and large, this film absolves Elvis of really any sort of autonomy, and in doing so, any sort of accountability in the controversial aspects to him as a person. And I'm not talking about his hip swivel or his sexual content that really got everybody riled up. No, I'm talking about his relationship with the Black community, because the film purely paints it as a positive relationship, an inspiration, and it hints at some of the more unsavory aspects of all musical culture at the time. Well, I guess we just have to call it what it is. The fact that he took songs from the Black community, went on to make millions without giving back much ever to the Black community. Yeah, he would take a picture with them, or he would give the occasional credit to the legends of the game. He didn't speak out. He wasn't really a big advocate in any sort of way for a community in which he took a lot. From performance style to his singing style to literal songs that he took. It's all just kind of hinted at and touched on. But even then, we get moments where he has to reconcile with the fact that he wouldn't even show up for a concert to show his support, but it's blamed on the colonel. Everything in this film is blamed on the manager, and it takes away all autonomy for him as a person. Looking at Priscilla, there's two aspects to their relationship pretty much breezed over and not challenged. One, her age when he first met her. Yeah, there's an age gap. She was only 14 years old. Here, they say teen daughter and just zoom on past any further context of the situation. And then they're divorced. There's a quick scene, but it doesn't nearly go into why Priscilla's leaving. We just get like little glimpses of her basically being jealous of him being, famous and on the road, but it takes away any sort of accountability he had in their marriage, which takes away a lot of the accountability he had. And Elvis was too complicated a person and figure for the film to completely strip him of his agency and his responsibilities. As much as he was responsible for keeping those gyrating hips moving and revitalizing his image through him and who he was, the flip side, he was also at the very minimum, partially responsible for all of the other stuff too. I also think, as great as this soundtrack is, here, the original music feels almost out of place. Every now and then, a rap is kind of inserted, and it very much feels out of place. We're dealing with a musical star, and when it blends the Elvis songs and the covers and stuff together, oh, it's amazing. But when it's completely new, it really does feel jarring. When we're dealing with a musician who has a full catalog of music to use, we have all these other great artists that he surrounds himself who have amazing music to use. But I would say that and a couple of my other negatives here do feel a bit like nitpicks when my major problem is the accountability aspect. Even that I thought would play a bigger part of my viewing experience. But at the end of the day, the film is able to, by and large, at the least, overcome that to tell the story it was trying to tell. Yeah, I wish it were a little bit more gritty, but as a love letter to Elvis, the spotlight on this type of abuse, it really is an effective film that moved me quite a bit as we got to the later stages of film and of Elvis's life. So if you're a fan of Elvis Presley, give this a full price ticket. I think you're really going to enjoy yourself with this film. If you've enjoyed Baz Luhrmann's previous films, I also think you're going to enjoy it overall. It's hard not to when it is a Baz Luhrmann film to the max. But if you're not particularly taken with Baz and you have quite complicated feelings toward Elvis, then I would say you could probably wait for this one to hit streaming. But it's worth a watch, at least to some degree. So that's my review for Elvis. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see Elvis, or have you already seen it? If you have, let me know your thoughts either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.